Hey, what's up, everyone? It's Eddie from Eddie's Emporium, and we're talking about the current state of affairs in the UK and international markets revolving, Trump's new tariffs. Today, it's a bit of a weird one because I've just been to a card con in Newcastle. I've been able to speak to a few people around the kind of tariffs, what they think, sellers and people. I was a buyer at this card con, by the way, not a seller. So I had the opportunity to have a wander around and speak to people who kind of do the routes, especially when you're thinking about graded sellers, like what's the impact to them when that's their kind of bread and butter. So I was quite interested to kind of see their reaction. It was lovely. I mean, the card con itself was, I don't know if you've ever been to a card con that's been poorly lit. Sorry, I think I just tapped the mic there. But it was so dim. Everyone was walking around with the light on their phone, looking in cases, trying to understand what card they want, the quality, and it was so difficult. I was looking for a few cards to grade, even though with the whole PSA submission, I still think there is opportunities to kind of grade. I'll get into that in a second. But when I was speaking to people about that, the general consensus was, obviously, this sucks, but everyone seems to be quite aware that this is going to cost them more money for PSA, Beckett, CGC as it stands. And as news is starting to kind of creep out the woodworks about PSA adding extra costs and all that kind of in-between stuff, a lot of the UK market's been reacting to that. So I think MGC put out a statement to kind of say, that they're committed to, serving, graded slabs to collectors of all different walks of life. And when I was walking around this card con, and especially when I was speaking to the big graders, who are going for the black labels, the PSA 10s, and that's their entire market, they're quite excited about it, which was quite surprising to me because I think they can just feel that they can justify adding 10% on, or however much it's going to be, for just the sake of doing it. Now, obviously, I'm not going to name names, but that kind of sucks because I know that you've already got pre-existing stock, but they're seeing cash symbols, and business is business. You're there to make money, but the idea of exploiting something that is quite sucky for everyone at the moment, especially a hobby, everyone started because it's fun. I think it's going to be real interesting to see how this develops moving forward, because I think the market in the UK is going to have a bit of a boom. So we're talking Ace, MGC, Tree Frog, whatever else, if I've not mentioned, not naming names for favourite or bias's sake, but I think even I've started looking at, okay, how am I going to approach this from a strategic point of view? Am I going to look to have my lower to mid cards potentially graded by, one of the UK-based operations, or am I going to look to kind of wait for massive bulk submission and try and eat up them costs and split it all across the products, kind of like how I do Japanese imports, try and order as much as possible to mitigate the import duty fees and having to put my prices up to a point where they're not competitive and I'm barely making any money. I think that's going to be something we're going to see in the future. But I do think, obviously, at Ace right now, I think they've obviously had the horrible situation where they got broke into around Christmas time, and they're still recovering from that part, but they'll be opening up your MGC, their subscriptions as well, where you can kind of get cards graded with a monthly allowance. I think I'm going to start looking towards doing a submission with them and maybe just kind of give a bit of feedback as to what I think, because obviously if we're talking on a value basis right now, again, this is subjective and based on the information I've looked at, Ace is the best grading company currently to go with to kind of get the most bang for your buck in terms of an Ace 10. You're not going to be a PSA 10, Beckett 10, but you're going to get the most out. And it's going to be quite good because I think it's going to be a bit of a reality check for the UK market, because you don't have to run as much risk. You're not shipping overseas. You're going to be having a good turnaround time. And I think that's going to do the UK market really. It's going to do really well, I think, and especially given that we are quite Brexit and all that. We can't utilize the Beckett European sub-center. I mean, I spoke to them best part of 5 days ago just to kind of see what the status is, and this was before the tariffs came out. They were like, send it to America, because it's actually probably going to cost you more than sending to America. Right now, that's probably going to change, and we touched on the subject of, are we going to see these centers pop up around the world now to mitigate tariffs, import costs, and all that? I don't think that's going to happen overnight, and I think that's going to be a really good opportunity for UK-based grading companies to benefit from and really gain a foothold in the market, or even more so than what they've already got, because I certainly am looking in that direction now. When I was looking at, say, grading a Japanese Espeon from Prismatic Evolutions, even just a standard ultra rare that's not, the SIR, you can grade that and it could be worth 34, 35 quid. If it only costs you, £1, £2 to buy, £12, £13, depending on, obviously, you get the labels done and whatever, you can still make a £10, £15 profit there, and that's actually a good return percentage in this current market. So it's going to be quite interesting to test. I'm going to probably have a prod at the market and see kind of how it reacts. I would say, don't buy impulsively right now. I know the feeling of like PSA not being accessible anymore could lead people into a panic. Don't waste money that you don't need to, because usually there will be we'll find a way, the laws will work out, nothing ever really sticks. So don't panic. Don't think you need to grade with anyone. Also, just collect for the fun of collecting. You don't need to grade to have value, sentimental, or, just keep them raw, keep them in the binder, and you go from there. But I do think it's going to be fun to see how this develops. I know it's all doom and gloom, but it's nice to think that, maybe in a few years' time, hypothetically, if things stay the way that they are, we can have a really good internal economy. So maybe like European grading companies might not always have the foothold of the, the big three in America, value-wise, but we might be able to see a shift in how they are valued in a better light. And I think from a collector's point of view, the idea of my prized cards potentially getting shipped on a long haul flight or boat, wherever they're on, to America to then get graded, the risk there is real high, and you hear horror stories on Reddit when you're looking at posts. And I think I'm looking forward to kind of being able to go down this route. And of course, you might want to save your big cards for the big three, that makes sense in terms of a strategy. But I think we're going to see a really good shift in the UK market, obviously, looking here. And I think PSA in a good few months or so is probably going to kind of see an opportunity to maybe think, oh, we're losing quite a bit of money here in comparison to pre-tariffs coming in. But yeah, it was also quite weird because a few of the kind of people, sellers at the market, they were quite happy that the tariffs were coming in. I know that they were talking about strategies to send to their friends in America to grade there. Again, it doesn't really work, because when you're sending a gift over $100 in America, it's classed as dutyable. I don't know if that's the right term, but you'd still be subject to that, and you're actually doing a lot more. It's a lot more risky as well, because your friend could just go dark, MIA, things could get missed, go into like residential. It doesn't have as much structure about it, I don't think. But yeah, there might be some fun strategies that you can find along the way. PO boxes and things like that. I don't know. I'm just pulling stuff out of my bum at that point. But some people were happy that they could control the population a bit more, and I don't know how I feel about that, because grading TCG should be for all people, manner of life. Some people take it more seriously in terms of wanting a business, like me. Some people want it just as a hobby, but you shouldn't be able to kind of say you can or cannot have that, or I should because I take it more seriously and I'm trying to have an income from this, than you average Joe that just wants to do it for the fun of opening packs. I think that's disgusting, is probably the best way that I can kind of summarize that feeling, because that's a real dark avenue. You know, we'll get round to it at some point and there will be a solution, but some people being happy about this and being able to like just say like, you know, they can or cannot have it is just not cool. But yeah, let me know what you think about the UK market right now, because it's, I think, a really exciting time when this kind of, the smoke clears, and hopefully this makes it more accessible, because there's not as much of a bias with obviously UK grading companies versus the American ones, because now they're less accessible, and we could see a real good boom in the UK market. You know, obviously not speaking internationally, of course, but if you're just keeping it in the UK and you don't plan to move anytime soon, PSA and CGC and Beckett's great, but like having UK based grading companies that have been established for a while and are growing, you're not going to go to a UK card con and it's not going to never hold value. And of course, the card itself is to appreciate and protect the card first and foremost. The number is a nice little giddy way to say how well you've kept your card. So that's it for that video. It was just a quick kind of summary, thought bubble on that card con that I went to. And yeah, let me know what you think in terms of the state of play that this is turning out.